With us now is Ricky Byrd. Welcome to the show. I was telling you
Hi,
that
Donna.
my
Thanks for having me.
yeah, I was telling you that my interview style is more like conversational. It's like a jam session. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your music and the early beginnings, and then we'll get to what you're doing now. So can you point out
Okay.
like a couple of big highlights for you? Because you've it's like a whole sheet of wonderment with you, Ricky Byrd. It's like, oh, he did
It's
this, he did that, he
lot of
did this, he
stuff.
did that. But you personally,
Yeah.
what resonates with you when I ask you about your career?
Well, I mean, when I was a youngster back in the 70s, I was a teenager in the 70s. So I guess some of those highlights was, you get into a garage band, right? I mean, I've been playing guitar since I'm 9.
Okay.
So I grew up in the Bronx, but we moved to Queens when I was like 12 or 13. That's when you're in junior high school, and that's when you start meeting other musicians, right? And so that was the beginning. And then you start playing church dances and, you know, uh, parties in the neighborhood, this and that. That was my first. So that's one thing. The next step was when I was a little bit older, like 16. I started playing in bands, and we'd play some of the cool clubs in Manhattan with phony proof, of course. Uh, such as like Max's Kansas City, which was a famous rock and roll club when I was a teenager. It was the kind of club where you'd be standing by the bar. Not that I was standing by the bar; I was only 16. But David Bowie and his then wife Angela would walk in like wearing matching white suits and stuff. It was that kind of place, right? So that was two. Now I'm a little older. The next step is I get into my first band which leads to the first record I ever did, first album. That was a band called Susan, and we were on RCA. So these guys moved down from Boston, and back in those days, we had the Village Voice right in New York. I don't even know if it still exists. It might just be online or something. But the Village Voice told you what was happening, right, in the
Yeah.
city. And so it was everybody who was playing, the clubs, the concerts, the Broadway. And then there were cool articles. But in the back was the classifieds. And if you were a musician, that's where you went to either find a lead singer that sounds like Rod Stewart, or you'd go, somebody needs a guitar player or this. And we were just teenagers. So I answered an ad and from this band moving from Boston to Manhattan. And I joined that band. It was called Susan. We were kind of like kind of like the Raspberries ish. There were like three lead singers. We recorded an album on RCA, and I do my first tour. So that was a big thing. We crossed the country opening up for Graham Parker and the Rumor, who had an amazing record called Squeezing Out the Sparks. That was the tour that we did. And we went from New York, wound up in LA, and every place in between. So that was a big milestone, right? First tour. I remember sitting. So we were playing in LA, and we were staying at this little famous dump of a motel called the Tropicana, right? And I can't remember what street. It wasn't on Sunset. It was below, I think. I can't remember what street it was on. But there were bungalows in the back, and I remember one day sitting out by the pool, right, dressed all in black, of course, in the hot LA sun.
Looking
And
cool,
I
right?
remember, yeah, yeah, trying to anyway, sweating, right? And I looked to my left, and Marianne Faithfull was like sitting on a cabana chair or whatever. I think she was reading a book of poetry, or at least in my mind, she was. And then, like 20 minutes later, Tom Waits comes walking out from the bungalows because he lived back then in that place. So I just looked around at the other guys in the band. I'm like, wow, this is it, right? This is rock and roll right here. So that was a cool milestone. Come back to New York. There was a period of like, what do I do next? The band broke up, of course, because that's what you do after you have some success. Um, actually one of the guitar players left, and then we tried to hang on a little bit, and we couldn't get any traction, so we broke up finally after doing some gigs in different variables of that original group. And then I'm in New York, and then the next step is I join Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, right? And we do the I Love Rock and Roll record. Some of it was already started from Eric Gamble, who was the guitar player before me. And I tell the story of how I got in the band, but Carol keeps telling me I'm telling the wrong story. So
Oh,
But it's
which story does Carol? Exactly. I was going to say which story, which version does Carol like better? We could either go with the Carol version or we could go with the Ricky Byrd version.
well, the way I remember it, and remember, man,
Okay.
we're talking about 1981, right? And a lot has
Right.
hit the wall since then. Um, I remember Carol saying, "Do you know who Joan Jett is?" And I said, "Yeah, man, she's great. I saw her at CBGB's with the Runaways. And would you like to go down and play with her, and jam with her?" Now, I remember her, Carol, telling me, I mean, in my brain, like obviously she was looking for a guitar player, I thought, because she already had one, right? But I went down and I played with her, and we all gelled. It was me and Joan, Lee Crystal, rest in peace, and Gary Ryan, and joined the band, and we were playing clubs. I think when we did some touring, we were in a Winnebago, if I remember correctly. And then we did the I Love Rock and Roll record. That comes out. We're on the road, and the record just starts climbing the charts, like in Billboard and the other music magazines, most of them that don't exist anymore. And things just changed as we were on the road because the record was going up the charts. There was more people at the gigs. The gigs were bigger. The Winnebago went bye-bye, and we got a tour bus. that was a nice change. And then I remember we had 2 tour buses at one point, one for the crew and stuff. It's the usual progression. And we're playing bigger places. We're playing our own gigs, but we're also opening for so many people I grew up listening to: Deep Purple, ZZ Top, The Who. Never opened for the Stones. So at that point we did a lot of packages with like Journey, REO Speedwagon, Loverboy, that the bands of that time. And who else did we open for? Oh, the Police. We did tours with the Police.
Wow.
Winding up at Shea Stadium here in New York, which was really cool. Of course, me being a Bronx boy, in my brain it was like, why can't this be Yankee Stadium? But
right.
I'm grateful.
Right, exactly.
I'm grateful for the stadium.
Right.
and I did live in Flushing, growing up after we moved from the Bronx, so it's kind of cool. I kept thinking about all those, those few kind of bullies in school where I was like the skinny musician, and they were kind of, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm playing Shea Stadium.
Right. It's like I'm here.
Right. Yeah, here I am.
I've arrived.
And, yeah, so I played with Joan from 81 to like 91. I came back and did a VH1 special with her in the 90s, later on in the 90s. And it was amazing, I mean, Joan is the best. The band rocked. There were a couple of different variables in the band. Gary and Lee left, and there was Tommy Price and Kasim Sultan, that section. That was like the Hate Myself for Loving You era. It was great. She was a marvel to watch, inspirational. And, let's face it, I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of Joan Jett. And I'm eternally grateful for her having me on that journey. We had a great time. I can't remember one harsh word between me and Joan. We got along fabulous. And then, so that was over. And then I immediately, I had a publishing deal. I signed a publishing deal. I left the Blackhearts. I stayed home, songwriting. I wanted to be that guy for a while. And I got a call from a friend of mine who was producing Roger Daltrey's record, Rocks in the Head. And he said, you'd be great for this record. So I did a record with Roger. We did half of it in New York, half of it in Abbey Road. That's a milestone, right?
Yeah, that's also cool. Also cool.
Sitting at the piano. I remember there was a woman at Abbey Road. So this was a long time ago, 92 or 93. And I remember her, she was the cafeteria lady at Abbey Road. And I remember her sitting down with it and saying, I remember when Paulie came here, and then he did, that kind of, she had that voice, man, right out of a BBC TV show, with a little white cafeteria lady cap and stuff. I think she was famous in Abbey Road. And and I remember sitting at the piano where, like, this was written, and that it was serious business.
Yeah, you could feel. Could you feel that energy, Ricky, like coming off the keyboards? Did it feel like ethereal almost?
The whole thing was surreal.
Yeah.
Like when we were up in the control room, and then I realized, it was the control room that looked over the giant room, and then I realized, oh my, this is the famous view that you would see in all those old black and white shots. So that was amazing. I mean, having Roger Daltrey, I saw The Who at Forest Hills Tennis Stadium in 1973, probably, somewhere in there. maybe a
So that
little
was a big
earlier.
moment. Yeah, moment for you.
Yeah,
It
man,
like
I'm
it comes
sitting in
full
the.
circle.
I remember in between takes, they were working on something else. Me and Roger were watching like soccer or football, as they call it, and we were in the lounge, and he was on one couch, I was on the other, and I just looked over and I went, "Freaking Roger Daltrey, man, this is weird." Another surreal moment, you know. So I did that, and then we came back to New York, and we did like a radio tour. We didn't really do it. We did some events. We played, I think it was Radio City or Carnegie Hall. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. Remember that one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But we did some cool events. We did some TV show. We did Regis and Kathy Lee.
Yeah.
I remember Regis was on vacation, so it was Kathy Lee and I think it was Dick Smothers, if I'm not mistaken, which was
Oh,
cool.
wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we did a radio tour. So we went across. We did some specific cities. So that was that. And the next thing, right after that, I got a call from Ian Hunter, and of course, I grew up on Mount the Hoople. Um, and he says, I'm going to my yearly trip to Scandinavia and some England gigs. Would you want to be the guitar player? And I'm like, yeah. All right, so let's go back to Max's Kansas City for a second. So I'm 16, and every time a band played in New York, they wound up at Max's. See,
Okay.
and of course, if it was a rock band like Zeppelin or Mod or Alice Cooper, if they were, everybody knew they were going to Max's. All the girls went to Max's, so that's why us kids from teenagers went to Max's. From Queens. But I remember they had a famous round table in the back where they would put the rock stars, right? And I remember me and my friend Phil and whoever else was with us, we were standing around this table, and Martha Hoople were sitting at this table. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, I'm playing guitar for Ian Hunter, playing all the young dudes, right? Another milestone.
And where is that? Wait, and where is that table now, right?
Oh,
That
yeah, man.
the table. Yeah, I know the table needs to be put into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Or where's the sign? Somebody must have the Max's sign.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
they
a great club. And I was talking to somebody about it. Like, our memory romanticizes a lot of stuff, but I'm sure there was a lot of nights we went there and like 5 people in the place, and we were like, man, what a
Yeah.
drag. But when it was hopping, it was hopping, man. It was packed, and there was like, there were artists, like Andy Warhol would be in there, and then you'd see like some obscure, like Argent, would be in there, the band. Like, I knew all these bands, right? And like I said, you'd see Alice Cooper would be in the back, or this one. It was cool.
Yeah.
But
Well, now,
we weren't really good.
I was gonna say Alice Cooper's also a scratch golfer. I don't know, Ricky, if you have any other talents.
Yes.
Do you golf at all or no?
No. I've been asked to do. I've been asked to do some events where golf was a part of. Like, it was a show.
Right.
To raise money for something, and then there was a golf tournament, and I'm there to tell stories, man. I mean, yeah, they let me amuse them with the golf
There
club.
you go. You could drive the cart. And you've got like this
Yeah.
new thing that's happening now that that you just debuted. What's going on with that? That's exciting. Actually, Carol was nice enough to send a copy to me. We love
Sobering
Carol.
Times.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, so
Huh?
I have been in recovery for over 30 years, like 33 years and a couple of months to be exact. Back in the day, just to simplify the whole conversation, I probably did too much too often.
Okay.
And luckily I got out before it was too late. And part of my responsibility is being one of these guys that were lucky enough to live past that, is to pass the message on and try to help other people that are struggling, So I kind of stumbled into this recovery music, rock and roll music thing. I did a record before this called Clean Getaway, right? And the reason I did that record, now I'm going backwards, is I wrote a song called Broken is a Place, which is on the Clean Getaway record. It's the final song on Clean Getaway. And I did a quick recording of it. I put it online, as we do these days. And I started getting messages from people from around the world that were either struggling or in recovery saying, man, you told my story, or like I identified with that line. I was like, that's interesting. So I wrote a second one. I wrote a third. All of a sudden I had like 6 songs, let's just say. And I had been doing some recovery events to raise money for treatment facilities. I'm asked to do these things. And somebody I met through that had a work for a treatment facility that was based out of Florida, but they had places in New Jersey. So I called them I basically said, hey man, what if I come there with my acoustic guitar and lead a recovery music group, which I had no clue what I was talking about. But in the music business and in show business, you just people say, hey, can you ride an elephant? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and then you
Say
figure
yes, and then you figure it out, right? Yeah.
and then you figure it out. Yeah. So I started doing these things, man, these recovery music groups, and the response from the clients sitting in front of me was more than I could ask for as a songwriter, and B, as somebody in recovery. I would get people laughing, crying, thinking, and that was my gig. That's what I wanted to do. So I said, I think I love this, and I started doing that. But then every time one of these groups ended, I would have one of the, needless to say, people came over and they wanted me to hey, can I have a guitar pick or can I just, and I was more than happy to, I brought a pile of those things. But they would say, where could I get this music? How could I get this music so I could take it home when I leave treatment? So, I kept procrastinating. I had no intentions of doing a record or anything. But after doing this for a year, I said, you know what, I should do something to sort of document this music. I did the Clean Getaway record. Then what I would do is, so I put that out. I got great reviews across the board. I mean, this is how I look at these records. If you're struggling with addiction of any kind, there will be something in these lyrics that you will identify with, and it will hopefully help you with your struggle. If you're already in recovery, these records will remind you why you're in recovery. And if you're just if that's not an issue for you, it's just a loud ass rock and roll record, both of them. There's some acoustic stuff, but it's what I do. It's loud rock and roll guitars, some nasty keyboards, and what I started doing was once Clean Getaway was out, I had a batch of them where I would, every time I went to do a recovery music group in New York, New Jersey, and around the country, I did keynote speaker stuff and recovery events. I would bring a stack of them and I would give them to the clinical director and I'd say, look, when this guy's ready to, or this girl's ready to leave treatment, you give them a copy of this to take home. So
Ricky,
we
that's
gave
nice.
out quite a few. We gave out quite, well, I'm trying to spread the message. We gave out quite a few of, over 2,000 of them, man, of Clean Getaway. And then it was like, okay, so that's done. Now what? So I sit down with my guitar and I start, I have to take time off in between because my tank is like empty. Like I'll sit down with a guitar and there's like nothing. I can't think of anything. I can't think of a word, a subject matter, anything. Fine. So I gave it a little time. I sat down. I started playing something. All right, what's that? Okay, And I always start with music and then I mumble over the music, over the guitar parts. Once I start mumbling, I kind of find a word in that mumble that's kind of cool. I write it down, and that from there the song grows. I started writing, and once again the subject matter was recovery and addiction. I tried to write something about this or that, and I'm not there yet. I'm sort of in this mode. And actually, I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, who's really cool today on the phone, and he said, you're evolving. That's why. He said, as a songwriter, you're right. You're writing about other stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll take that for right now. So I started writing, and all of a sudden I had another 15 songs, and I said, okay, let's do it. Second record, and that's Sobering Times. That came out on September 25th, which is my 33rd Clean and Sober anniversary. So, it's been out like 3 months. And actually, this week, which is, I don't know when this is going to air, but I have the coolest song in the world on Little Steven's Underground Garage, one of the songs from Sobering Times, which that's always cool. Turn your radio on, man, and there you are. I still get a thrill out of that. I got to hear it in the car. That's my favorite thing, when you're just driving and your music comes on the radio. That's it right there, man. And I'm in promotion mode to do this, and hopefully when this pandemic ends, sooner rather than later, I'll be able to start going to treatment facilities again and start doing my recovery music groups again. I mean, I've been able to do a lot of stuff on Zoom, like we're doing right now, Skype or Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really do the recovery music groups unless I pre-tape something and then they kind of show it to a room. I don't even know if they're allowing all the clients in one room right now. I obviously can't go back to one of these places that I go to every month. So I don't know what the deal is. So
But
right
we'll
now I'm
figure
just
out a solution. Right.
yeah. And also I am 2 years ago I went to school to get certified as a drug and alcohol counselor. So I'm
Mm.
certified in counselor in training and a recovery coach. And I got a chance to do a little bit of that before the pandemic for a couple of months at a really cool place out in Staten Island called Christopher's Reason. And I was a counselor for a couple of months, and man, I loved it.
It's awesome.
And I would definitely see doing more of that when this ends. And I'm inquiring about. I know that there's counseling that they're doing a lot of counseling, tele counseling or whatever the term is. So I've reached out to somebody and to see if they could hook me up. I think I have to work for a place to be able to do it, but I want to get my hours, because the
Yeah.
clock is running. I have to get hours, X amount of hours in a certain amount of time. I'm sure they're extending everything because of what's going on. And going back to what you said at the beginning, the list of all the people I've played with or shared a stage with.
Yes.
Um, like Ian, I toured with. Joan, I toured with. Roger, I did the record. We did a radio tour. Southside Johnny, I played with for about a year, and that was great. The Asbury Jukes. I'm sort of an official Asbury Juke in the list. But a lot of the stuff I get to do, which is brilliant, is because of my history. I'm asked to be in these like kind of all-star bands to do events. You know, whether it's at the Rock Hall or actually I did 2 recovery events, the last 2, not this summer obviously, but the summer before and the summer before that. They asked me to put together recovery events, which we did right outside the Rock Hall, right in the front. They have their summer stage. And that was great, man. That was so cool.
Yeah.
But I do these other events. I do, and quite a few of them were canceled, obviously, this year, where I'm part of this really great all-star band. So it's like me, Liberty DeVito, Jeff Carlisi from 38 Special, my friend Rob Arthur, who plays with Peter Frampton, sometimes Paul Schaefer, sometimes Will Lee, sometimes, and we back up all these cool people. So if you see that list of people I've worked with, I've shared a stage with Mavis Staples, Smokey Robinson, Brian Wilson, because I'm in the band, right? And we back them up. So it's 3 songs for Brian Wilson, 3 songs for Smokey Robinson, which was like, I was standing back there. It was almost like the Roger Daltrey story, but I was on stage and I'm going, it's freaking Smokey Robinson. I'm playing Tracks of My Tears or whatever the song was. So like I have nothing to complain about. I have a pretty really cool, wide range of career stories of all different aspects of how you could be a musician. See, the event stuff I love because it's, when you play in a band, you basically play the same 10 or 12 songs. You may shift a song as you write them, but you go on tour and you still, you're always doing the same stuff. When I do these event things, I'm sent, okay, here's who it is. It's Sam Moore from Sam and Dave. It's, Mavis Staples. It's this one. It's that. And here's the songs. So you got to learn the songs. And there's R&B, there's soul music, there's rock and roll. Billy Squier was on one of them. Eddie Money we did with one who was funny as hell. Rest his soul. And so you have to be on your toes, and you have to really, as a musician, you really like pull from all different parts of your influences, and it's also, it's really widened my ability to play guitar with whoever asks. I feel like I could play with whoever would be there for me to play with. Jazz, I'd be completely useless, but soul music, rock and soul music, rock and roll, I know I've learned how to really play all of that stuff by doing all this cool stuff in my career. So I'm good.
Well, we're all hoping on that note, we are all hoping that our stages open soon. And
Yeah, right.
Ricky, it was really nice to spend some time with you today. Thank you so very, very much. And I wish you all the best and continued success to you.
And I wish you the very same thing. And let me just not forget to mention that you could get the CD Sobering Times.
Yes.
Because this is the thing I keep forgetting to say.
Oh.
You could get it at rickybyrd.com. Obviously, we're having a Bird holiday sale right now, Christmas sale. And signed CDs and this and that. And we kind of signed a distribution deal after the record came out because I like to do things backwards. So middle of January, you'll be able to get the record on all of the usual suspects like Amazon and iTunes, Apple Music, this and that. But for you won't be able to get signed copies. So if you want to get a signed copy, if you want something for Christmas, stocking stuffer for the person in your family that might want to hear this music, rickybyrd.com. Couldn't make it any simpler,
rickybyrd.com.
any easier than that.
Well, thank you so much and continued success to you. And I'm very happy for all the people that you're able to help through your music and through your talent. So happy
I
journeys to you,
appreciate
Ricky Byrd.
it. Have
You're
a
welcome.
wonderful holiday.